It's the 18th day of April 2023. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the show tonight. I hope you're doing well. I'm going to be your host, Dana Durnford. I'm also known as the nuclearproctologist.org. And you can call into the show tonight during these live shows at 709-589-4406. 4406. And I hope everybody is good to go. We got a massive, unbelievable amount of people tonight. 6 people, 7, 8 people. What the hell is going on tonight? Wow, I picked the right topic tonight. Woo! Killing it already. 8 people. If you work really hard for over a decade, you too can have 8 people on your live shows. That's pretty cool. You gotta admit it. Yeah, it's a lot of work, 5 days a week. But really, like, there's not too many YouTubers can say they got 8 people on their show. And the poll tonight, of course, big poll. This is a crazy story. We're going to start off with that tonight. If Israel destroys Iran's nuclear plant, you know Iran's going to destroy Israel's nuclear plant, and Iran destroys Israel's nuclear plant, do they get the Darwin Award? Which is an idiot award, right? And like Israel is, if you look at them objectively, they're not really high IQs, right? They've been brainwashed for so long, for so many generations. They think the whole world is out to get them, and their only solution to everything is to use weapons and violence. And they're fighting the Palestinians. They're killing an average of 5,500 a month. Half is women and children, so roughly 100 women and children each day. And the Palestinians don't got tanks. They don't got 4,000 tanks. They don't got jet fighters. They don't got fighter helicopters. They don't got navy. They don't got artillery. You know, and Israel got a lot of artillery. The 4th biggest weapons producer on the planet on top of that. And they're funded by Christians worldwide and by the deep pockets of America. America gives them all kinds of weapons, Britain and the United Kingdom, France and everybody. Palestine has nothing. So it's pretty easy to wipe them out. They don't have any defense, and the world has turned their back on them. They're not going after Hamas, they're going after the Palestinians. They're using the Hamas as a cover story. And that's what I mean. There's so much indoctrination that they're just fodder for the cannon, right? For the crazies, the headbanger Jewish population that's down there. And so now they've been fighting with Iran, doing everything they can to sabotage Iran. And so people like Scott Ritter, these are analysts, are really good at their jobs too, and Ray McGovern and people like that. And so the consensus now, after anybody familiar with this topic, is that. And so I was a bit confused a few days ago because Iran had shot 300 missiles, different types of missiles, towards Israel. And so the consensus was that they were basically flushing out Israel's defenses. But at the same time, they had used weapons that Israel wasn't familiar with. And these weapons had multiple missiles. Some were duds and some weren't. And so they penetrated Israel's defense system. It was supposed to be the best in the world, the very best in the world. And it's the same defense that military, American and British, and France, for instance, are using on their aircraft carriers and their submarines, which means Iran could actually sink them. And so if they go down, because Israel is a thug nation, right? They're a bunch of thugs. They're not used to fighting anybody that can fight back, and all of a sudden now someone fought back and they lost their minds, right? And they really do believe that they can, even though they have no experience fighting somebody else that fights back, they're only used to fighting the Palestinians, and they got 6-7 generations or 60 years or something fighting the Palestinians who can't fight back. And they installed Hamas, and Hamas has rudimentary weapons. Nothing like Iran. And they don't have tanks, they don't have an air force and army, they don't have a navy, etc., right? You don't have the trappings of a strong military, but Iran does. And so if they attack Iran's nuclear plant, which happens to be extremely well guarded, and they're going to lose a lot of jets doing it, and they've never lost jets before, it's going to be total disconnect. And so the big concern, of course, if they attack the plant, we got a nuclear meltdown on our hands, which affects every species, 8 million species worldwide. So they're declaring war against humanity now. They're attacking humanity by doing something like that. And they have a record of it. And they also use depleted uranium, which is a war crime. Whether they admit it or not, those are in the know knows this is a war crime. And so you know for a fact that Iran is going to attack their nuclear plant, the Dimona nuclear plant. And who knows what other sites. Which is going to be another meltdown. And then Israel, of course, who's not used to fighting anybody, is going to panic and use nuclear weapons, I would imagine. And because Benjamin Netanyahu, the minute that he's out of the office, he's going to be arrested, most likely and his wife spend the rest of their lives in jail. And so an endless war is the only option he's really got on his hands. And Iran has clearly, after 50 years of being bullied, asserted its dominance and had, so my original analysis of the 300 weapons coming in, because they're not traveling very fast, was they're going to get shot down, right? Because they're traveling fairly slow, and Israeli jet fighters and coalitions could pick off the majority of them, and the iron wall, so to speak, that Israel has, which is supposed to be the best in the world, would defeat the missiles. But the media is portraying that narrative, but that's simply not the true narrative, as we now know, because of the analysts with an incredible amount of credibility, like Ray McGovern and Scott Ritter and several others that are switched on and are in the know. And so that's why you see this particular depiction, because after Fukushima with a nuclear meltdown, he picked up 30 million one-ton bags of radiation. 30 million. It's hard to wrap your mind around it. But a one-ton bag in the back of a pickup truck, well, it'd be equal to if you took the one-ton bags and took a highway and wrapped it around the entire planet. This is what it would look like in one-ton bags of radioactive fallout. But that's only 3% of the land in Fukushima Prefecture. And the food was banned by 14 prefectures. But on the other side of the equation is, humanity doesn't have much hope of surviving Fukushima and 80 years of nuclear fallout. Fukushima was a pulse event. So I'm very concerned, and rightfully, and everybody else should be. And so I was trying to put together a couple of pictures so I can wrap my mind around the possibilities of what might happen. So Israel is covered in radioactive fallout, and they're picking it up in one-ton bags. Iran is covered in radioactive fallout. But the whole planet would be covered in radioactive fallout. It wouldn't just be Iran. And now Iran is not a coward. They have now stepped up to the plate, and they've showed that they're not going to be bullied anymore. And because Israel is not a very intelligent country, and I'm sure that offends some of the Israelis, but we're sitting on the outside looking in, and it's clear what's going on. You're not very intelligent. You got, you're taking your children, you're inserting them into a military, and you're using them to bludgeon a people that bleed and have the same hopes and dreams as you, and who you used to live in harmony with 60 years ago. And now you've turned them into just monsters who shoot the country to pieces because they can't shoot back. You wouldn't do it if they could shoot back. I can assure you that if they had the equal army that the Israelis have, and the equal weapons and the monetary and the training, Israel would never even dream of going against them because it's a fair fight, and Israel has no history of a fair fight. They shoot fish in a barrel and they pretend that they're special. That's their legacy, and everybody knows it, except for them, apparently. And I think, the Bible, the prophecy for the Bible is the world will turn against Israel. And only the people in Jerusalem, this is why it was so important for them to take Jerusalem from the Palestinians and then to ethnically cleanse Jerusalem. That was really important too. And we don't hear that in the narrative at all for some reason. But the Bible says only those in Jerusalem will go to heaven. God will come down and will kill everybody and to defend the Israelis who are being attacked by the world. So they're provoking the world, and they're trying to artificially create the prophecy with their red heifers and everything else, because they can just genetically modify a heifer to have their red heifer, right? And they artificially turn the world against them by shooting the Palestinians that are in a so-called barrel. And the abject cruelty of what they do is insane. And, you know, I posted some videos on this site. And one of the headlines was this Israeli soldier, sniper, a child really, only a kid. But he was bragging on social network how he shot 13 children in one day, Palestinian children, in one day. He wasn't bragging about killing Hamas. Like the rest of the Israeli soldiers, they brag about killing the Palestinians. They mock them. And because there's a disconnect. They have so many generations of this indoctrination, and the country's the fourth biggest weapons producer on the entire planet. And they don't understand there's a bigger picture. They don't really know how to love each other or love their children's. Their idea of love is their child is going to grow up and get into the military, and killing the Palestinians is their rite of passage, which is just an abnormal, like a mental illness, really. And they're very low IQ because they buy into it. And even though it's clear to everybody else worldwide, they defend that position because they have that low IQ. Now, they might have an education, but that doesn't mean you're smart. There's an endless amount of scumbags with education, and I'm going to take you through a whole bunch before the night is out. But I just want to say that this rhetoric, this tit for tat was great, or this attacking the Palestinians was great because they're not able to fight back proficiently. They don't have 4,000 tanks. They don't have depleted uranium munitions to penetrate. They don't have United States and France and Britain giving them weapons, and the list goes on and on and on. And Israel is just abusive in every sense of the word. And they deserve the world's contempt, absolutely, but not their hate. And we should all feel bad for them because they're so fucking stupid. They're literally stupid. I'm pretty sure the majority of them are incompetent in everything else in life. They're only good at killing women and children because it's obvious and because they defend it, right? It's a coward thing that they do, isn't it? And it's not their fault that they're indoctrinated and that they bought into it and that they think they have the moral high ground when the rest of the world can clearly argue the point to the opposite. They insist that because they have the might and therefore they're in the right. And that's simply the mentality of a moron and a dummy. Literally a dummy. They're dummies. They're destroying their own future and everybody else's at the same time. So they're a liability to the 8 million species and the rest of humanity. And they look at us with contempt for some reason. They think they have this arrogance, this hubris, this pompous attitude that they're somehow better than other people. I don't see myself better than anybody else. I see myself as a contributor to this planet and to the species. And that's what, if we all done that, then we wouldn't have any issues. And so if the nuclear facility is threatened, Iran doctrine could change. So the media is going to come out and demonize Iran. Nobody in the media is going to look at it from an objective or from a partial point of view, right? They're all going to pick one side, which is going to be the military-industrial complex, which is Israeli, basically, side for that part of the nation. Over the past years, the fake Zionist regime has only threatened. It has done acts of sabotage and terrorist actions against the nuclear industry, but they've never fought a real war against anybody. They never went and invaded a country that can fight back proficiently, right? That had the weapons and the was an equal army. They don't know what that's like. They're just used to shooting fish in the barrel, and now they're all. It was really shocking, you know. They just destroyed a whole country, and someone shoots back at them, and they all lose their fucking minds, like a bunch of retards and children, right? Oh, nobody's allowed to shoot back at us. Literally like that. But they sit there and sabotage an entire country that through the indoctrination they refuse to accept as a country. They refuse to accept that the children are humans. I mean, really, right? They're a problem child is what they are. They act like children, like an 11-year-old throwing a tantrum all the time. They have no rational or reasoning powers. Or they call into this fucking number and argue the points because they won't do it with me because I can argue back. Because I know a lot more than most of them ever can dream of. If the fake Zionist regime wants to use a threat to attack our country's nuclear center as a means to put pressure on Iran, it would be possible, foreseeable, to revise the Iran's nuclear doctrine and policies and leave behind the previous declared considerations. Well, if they attack their nuclear plants, it's fairly obvious to anybody who's paying attention that Iran is going to attack their Dimona and other nuclear sites, and they're going to succeed. Not maybe, they will succeed. And Benjamin Netanyahu, who has nothing to lose, will use the nuclear weapons. And we all lose, of course, at that stage. And shitlegs themselves, Rafael Grossi, Iran closed the nuclear facilities in the wake of Israeli attack. Now, they're feeding Israeli all the information constantly about the nuclear sites in Iran. And they're emboldened by that information, right? But that doesn't mean that Iran won't clobber Israel back. And Israel, only defense will be to use nuclear weapons because they can't defeat the weapons and the massive amount and the military itself from Iran. They can't defeat that without nuclear weapons. And right now they've lost face because they know they can't defeat it. But Benjamin Netanyahu is crazy enough and stupid enough to use a nuclear weapon. And multiple nuclear weapons. Iran is about to start a nuclear war. No, Israel is about to start a nuclear war. Iran doesn't have nuclear weapons. Israel does. And the West is determined to lose. So like Alistair Heath, or whatever the hell his stupid name is, does anybody think this is Joe Biden? It's supposed to be Joe Biden. We see a lot of different versions of Joe Biden. I don't think this is Joe Biden myself, but I could be wrong. And this is the New York Times, was it? The Telegraph. If Joe Biden was a serious president, he would announce that the mullahs in Tehran have crossed the red line. Well, why should Joe Biden get into a war with Iran? What's the point of that? Why should the Americans get into a war because Israel, the bully, is finally getting slapped back a little bit? That they are the existential menace to civilized nations. How is Iran a threat or a menace to civilized nations? How can, first off, the U.S. has 900 bases worldwide. They have 49 bases around Iran on its borders, for goodness sakes. How many bases does Iran have on the United States border? Oh, that's right, none. That no country can shoot hundreds of drones and missiles at one of its neighbors with impunity. Well, what is Israel doing? Like Israel, in just the first several weeks, used the equivalent of 2 Hiroshima bombs in weapons on Gaza. I think it was the equivalent of on the 550 pounds per square kilometer of conventional weapons and DULRAM, depleted uranium low-level radioactive materials, from their 155 millimeter rounds, which are DULRAM. They're not coated, they're not tipped, they're pure uranium, which has gone through a chain reaction. They're pyrophoric. They catch fire as they're going through the air, and they release the isotopes into the land, the water, and they contaminate it forever. And then no government can go on funding terrorism, rape, torture, and murder on an industrial scale. Yeah, the Americans shouldn't continue to fund the terrorist Israelis who rape and torture and murder on an industrial scale in Palestine. He would state that the Iranian regime must be treated like the global pariah that it has become, that all of its proxies must be destroyed, and that above all, it will never be allowed to get anywhere near nuclear weapons. He would state, so this is a journalist, so-called journalist, putting words in a president of a different country's mouth, saying that the Americans should go destroy Iran. And the reason he's saying it, because Iran will destroy Israel if Israel crosses the line that Iran just said don't fucking cross. And even if America jumps in, Israel is going to get destroyed. Like, Israel is never, ever, it sponsors terrorism to attack it as a false flag so he can blame it on the country it wants to invade. And when you look at October the 7th, and I posted videos when this happened, and it was clear from the evidence that's exactly what had happened, that they were allowed to come in, they were encouraged. Hamas, they got 5 million refugees from Palestine living in refugee camps with Israelis in military uniforms with German shepherds and barbed wire fences outside of Gaza. Just like Nazis, 100% like what the Nazis had done, right? And it's been going on for 50 plus years. So for 50 years, they've been able to keep 5 million refugees out of Palestine, but they can't seem to kill Hamas. They killed 37,000 Palestinian women and children mostly, but very few Hamas. And this has been the rhetoric we've seen for its entire legacy, the same narrative over and over and over, since Hamas was installed there by the government so they can demonize Arafat and they can take over the country in increments over decades. So when they do stuff, they do it in increments over decades. It's not like an overnight thing. This is well thought out, and now it's coming to fruition. And Israel has slowly consumed all the Palestinian land, called it their own because of a Bible, because of a page in the Bible, and have whipped up this orthodoxy Jews who vehemently believe that their Torah and their Talmud is somehow the ultimate, gives them the ultimate right to destroy everything with the belief that they're going to be going to heaven. They're literally no different than what they complain about for the Muslims. If all else fails, he would use American military power to destroy Iran's nuclear installation. So to destroy Iran's nuclear installation, you're talking about a meltdown, nuclear meltdowns. Which also means, even if America does that, Iran is still going to attack Israel's nuclear power plants, right? You know that. And nuclear sites. Israel can't do it. But they're stupid enough to go do it. And they're going to be sucking on their thumb going, poor me. Iran is throwing weapons at us. And they're jeopardizing everybody in the 8 million species future in their self-centered, egotistic, uneducated, low IQ approach to reality. They got everything given to them, and they can't get along with anybody. And I think that is the problem, right? They got everything given to them. And they've been exporting weapons worldwide. They're the fourth biggest weapons producer, the fourth biggest producer of misery. Because that's what a weapon represents, is misery, right? And again, Alistair, as soon as you look at Alistair, you realize he's just a weasel. He really is just a weasel. That's what he is in life. He's like that in life. And every one of his friends growing up would have said that about him if you interviewed him. He's a weasel. And his idea of a fight is when you turn your back, he'll sucker punch you. He was like that growing up. I can guarantee you his friends would have verbatim So geothermal is a solution to nuclear power, by the way. And we got quite a few stories about geothermal tonight. This particular company is looking really good. It looks like they cracked one of the sacred codes because all the money goes to nuclear, very little goes to geothermal. And geothermal can replace gas, oil, coal, and nuclear plants. Deep geothermal leaders secure funding to fuel commercialization and replace fossil fuel. Secures funding. So how much money do they waste every day thrown at the nuclear industry, at the fabled small modular reactors? They don't even have a license to the application to the regulatory agencies. But yet they're burning absurd amount of money every day in America and Canada and pro-nuclear countries. And then the fusion industry, which is still 50 years away from fruition, if ever. And they've been doing it for since 1904. They're working on the same designs for fusion as 1904. So like they're not bringing anything new to the table, and they're not trying to either. But they suck up all this money and resources and precious metals and academics and schools and universities and institutions and government agencies, and put all their effort into something that's not going to come to fruition. When geothermal is good to go. Any company could build a geothermal plant. You don't need to bring in, and you don't have to store the waste for a billion years, and it's not splitting atoms into the ecosystem for millions of years. And they're well aware of it, and they've done everything they can to keep it out of the conversation, but it's finally getting the spotlight. Now, we talk about geothermal every single show, right? And we've covered just probably 1,000 different headlines on geothermal just in the last 2 years or so. To fuel commercialization and replace fossil fuels. Quatsi Electric originally came out and said that their deep geological or deep geothermal company would be able to replace gas, oil, and coal plants. Right, and they would just drill right below the plant, leave the infrastructure. Now the nuclear industry has jumped on board that narrative and says they can do that with small modular reactors. But the reality of it is anything small modular reactors can do, geothermal can do 100 times quicker, 100 times cheaper. Well, let's say 10 times cheaper. And this company right here is definitely at the forefront of that. There's a few of them that we have identified over the years, right? And I've covered this one before, but this one now is moving forward. It has figured out how to dig deep enough, quick enough, to be completely the real deal, to be competitive and the real deal. Delivering deep geothermal faster and at deeper depths. Now, every community can just dig their own geothermal and get rid of their gas, oil, coal, nuclear disease factories. While remaining cost effective is how the company will go from delivering megawatts of energy to terawatts. Investors include leading global drilling rig services, technological providers, and you can see all the companies involved. And so they're actually the real deal. Its potential to shift the energy industry is clear to those in the know, but now it's about how we can access this natural battery below us. And yeah, because geothermal has many things. It's a heat. You can use it for heat. You can use it to cool. You can use it as a storing energy. And you can use it to make heat. And you can use it to generate electricity. Because as you go deep enough, you're going to hit 1,000 degree Fahrenheit temperatures, which is hotter than gas, oil, coal, or nuclear. Which means anything they can do, geothermal can do better. And if we took the resources, if we took a fraction of resources that we're wasting on the small modular reactor ideology, or the stupid fusion, the moronic fusion, as we know now. I mean, really, right? 300,000 degree Fahrenheit temperatures. And you're going to use magnets to control it, but you don't have proof that will actually work. you're not decades away. You're like a half a century away from actually having something that might work, because it's clear that the magnets are not going to work, or they would have worked already. You would have had an example. And the examples that they're using for fusion are pathetic. I mean, they're saying they get more energy back when you ask them the following, how much energy are you getting back? Their first response 3 years ago was they had enough energy at 300,000 degree Fahrenheit temperatures. They made enough, they made back the energy they put into it, which is equal to lighting up New York City for many seconds, right? They got that much energy back, and they produced enough energy, it was equivalent to a 9-volt battery like you use in your smoke detector. But how can you quantify an assertion like that? Because that's such a tiny amount. And the amount that you used, this is literally, if I pulled a hair out of the back of a beer, would anybody notice it, right? If I pulled a twig off a tree in the middle of a forest, would anybody ever be able to notice it? No. So then last year, the year before rather, in the very end of the year, December 10th or something, they said that they produced enough energy, extra energy at 300,000 degree Fahrenheit temperatures to boil 60 liters of water, 60 kettles of water. Again, how much water can you boil at 300 million degree Fahrenheit temperatures? And then you say you got that energy back, and there was enough excess energy to boil 60 liters of water. Again, you can't quantify that assertion because you can't extrapolate 60 liters of water extra at 300 million degree Fahrenheit temperatures from something that doesn't even exist. And then they had people now, they're on the stock market, this brought in all kinds of investors and copycat companies that gobbled up all kinds of investors and scientists and academics and precious metals. And there's nothing left over for geothermal. Again, geothermal literally is put in a closet and the doors are closed, the light bulb is taken out of the closet, and the closet is in the back of a dungeon. And geothermal could replace everything. It's 24-hour a day, reliable. You only need a small amount of people to maintain it. You don't need 10,000 people there every day. You don't have to bring in 1,000 people every 18 or 14 months to do 8,000 types of maintenance. You don't got to spend $100 million a year to maintain the site, which is what nuclear does. A typical nuclear plant. And then the waste is not, once you take the nuclear plants, you take the waste out of the nuclear plant, you put it in a fuel pool where it's still splitting atoms and it's no longer in a containment. So splitting those atoms are released all day long in the form of radioactive fallout. And the form of radioactive fallout. And they're going to build robots. The robots are going to go in and solve all their issues. But they got 80 years and there's no robots can survive it, let alone humans, right? But this is how they made the world complacent with these false promises. Oh yeah, the robots are going to show up and resolve everything. And of course it's not going to happen. It's not even a pipe dream. It's a complete lie, a complete misrepresentation. It's a dishonest. The whole fable of nuclear, its whole inception is dishonest. This whole bloody thing about nuclear, and just bear with me 1 second there. Don't forget to click around a little tiny bit, like, subscribe, notify. Not that YouTube will make any difference. And I know if you talk about Israel, the trolls are going to show up. That's what like humans do, right? And to be disruptive, and thumbs down the video, and all the other stuff, right? Because they can't have a debate. We give them opportunities. We give the nuclear industry their phone number every fucking night, and they never show up. They can't win the debate. They definitely can't win the debate against me because I have the documentation at my fingertips. and I know what their lies are. It's 100% predictable, just like the Israel narratives. It's 100% predictable. The lies are always the same, and they're lies. And it's a coward society. And a low IQ society. And that's very clear in their actions, isn't it? The durable and versatile energy solution is being looked at for large-scale applications because the ability to provide secure baseload power, specific to deep geothermal, can be applied anywhere on Earth regardless of the geographic location and the densities of the rocks. So this company, anyway, has cracked the big issue that we got with geothermal. There's a couple other companies ready to come up with great solutions. There was another company, what they're going to do is they're going to use 25,000 pounds per square inch water jets to cut up the rocks as they drill too deep. Because the problem with the deep drilling is the bits get chewed up pretty quick. And it's a big deal to pull it back and replace it and get it back down there. And all that heat, it wears out the disc really quick. So the new technologies for other companies we noticed now was using 25,000 pounds per square inch water jets to slice up the rocks, use pneumatic hammers to pound up those slices, and then the drill bit can find its way into the vents that they're trying to get to with the temperatures they're trying to attain. So this showed up last night on Google. So whoever done that is getting fired too. And Google fired 28 other employees after a sit-in to protest over Israel's cloud contract. And Google come out and reprimanded it. You will do what you're told. There's no such thing as Google don't be evil. There's Google is evil, right? And everybody knows it now. They're completely out of control. And they burn books. Any books they don't like, they'll burn them. Like they took down my site 2 years ago looking for spiders, the crime of the century apparently, with 1,600 of these presentations. And hundreds of them were from the research expeditions where we spent 6 years doing species counts from Vancouver, British Columbia to Alaska. And because of Fukushima radioactive fallout, that's an extinction event. And so we're very concerned about Israel narrative the whole, for quite a long time of hitting the nuclear plants in Iran and anywhere else. And we're very concerned now because of the escalation and because Benjamin Netanyahu his ideology is based on the Torah and the Talmud, because his youngest kid, I believe it was, when he was 15 years old, was able to recite the Torah, which meant he was ridiculously religious, right? And because Benjamin Netanyahu now is embedded basically with the ultra-Orthodox Jews, slash the headbangers, the people that don't work and who, there's about 1 million of them, are a burden to Ukraine or Israel. There's 7 million people, I think it is, in Israel. 6 million of them are working to support the 1 million Orthodox Jews, right? And they don't even realize it. They don't realize that they're just useful idiots. They've been fed the rhetoric everywhere they go in their country. Everybody hates them. No one hates them. No one gives a fuck about them like any other country, outside of the point that they're a misery machine and they're the fourth biggest weapons producer on the planet. And they're nothing but a pain in the fucking arse for everybody worldwide. And it's not about being Jews or anything else. It's about being low IQ, uneducated buffoons that pick on countries that can't fight back. They thought Iran couldn't fight back because it had 48 military, U.S. and British military bases on its border, but Iran showed them difference. And now they don't know what to do because Iran will hit them back much harder than they're going to do. And if they escalate it, their only solution now will be to use a nuclear weapon. And you read the idiot from the Telegraph earlier, where he wants America to go do it because Israel's too cowardly to do it themselves, because they can't handle getting the shit kicked out of them, because that's exactly what's going to happen now, and they know it. And reality is setting in. And because what does a bully do when they're in a bad position? They panic. And a bully with nuclear weapons, and a stupid one like Benjamin Netanyahu, is a threat to the 8 million species and the future of humanity. Can nuclear energy solve the climate crisis? Again, this is this low-life degenerate On April 10th, the Steamboat Institute hosted a debate on nuclear energy. Does the United States need more nuclear energy? Well, of course it doesn't. If it did, it would have been building them non-stop post 3 Mile Island, right? They've only built 2 reactors post 3 Mile Island. Around 50 people attended Wednesday night's debate. Around 50 people about nuclear energy, including nuclear college students with the Land and Energy Management Club. So this wasn't 50 people, this was a seated audience, right? Everyone Western Slope now spoke to wanted to learn about both sides of nuclear energy debate. And obviously when you see these narratives, and then the media don't know the difference, that should terrify you. When the media claims not to know the difference, and that the people in the audience are the authorities, when obviously they're not. The pro-nuclear argument, Jessica Lovering, and we covered her quite a lot over the last number of years, has a PhD, argued the affirmative. Lovinger has a PhD from Carnegie Mellon University in Engineering Public Policies and has worked in the nuclear policy space for 15 years, among her accolades. And the evidence shows that it's very safe, she says. It's low life cycle emissions, even lower than renewables, says Jessica. Again, this is an absolutely ludicrous assertion to suggest that it's lower than renewables. And we've heard these narratives for a very long time, right? What's that stupid thing she got around her neck, I wonder? It's low life cycle emissions, even lower than renewables. Well, first off, once you take the reactor fuel out and put it in the pool, it's boiling off about 120,000 liters a day out of each pool. And each reactor building has 2 pools. And what it's boiling off is the saturation of radioactive isotopes into the ecosystem. And every nuclear plant, except for a few worldwide, are surrounded by farms, which mean the food is lethal. You're getting lethal food. She said nuclear energy can generate a lot of power with a small amount of material, but it can't. It's only about 4 to 5% efficient. And then the amount of time and energy and effort that goes into producing the fuel is extraordinary. It's really extraordinary. You got to dig up mountains. You got to use lakes of chemicals just to separate it. And the chemicals are evaporated into communities and the ecosystem and the water tables. The whole process is the most resource intensive in history. And everything at a nuclear plant is triply inspected by independent inspectors. It's a very, very expensive and a very commodity resource intensive industry. But the fuel cycle, once it goes through a chain reaction, it goes in the pool, it's hemorrhaging radiation. The same amount of atoms as it would to boil water for 1 million homes and businesses is no longer in a containment when it goes in the fuel pool, and those atoms are still produced for 1 million years. And where do you think they're going to go? In the birds and insects, mammals and animals and children and everything else. And the ultimate outcome, you don't need a nuclear war to destroy humanity, you need the nuclear fuel cycle. So these are very, very dishonest people. Now, she's a millionaire for being a dishonest person, and that's good enough for her. She got what she needs. She said, I like to use is air travel. She told a Western Slope now. You see these big airplane accidents, like recent things happening in the Boeings, and it's really scary. But when you look at the evidence, flying is still the safest way to travel per mile. Safer than automobiles, which we get into every day. And which is a very dishonest way of talking about nuclear. And let me explain that to you, because that's kind of important. Because an automobile is isolated to a very small amount of people, right? But a nuclear accident is not. And nuclear fuel pools are not. And they both have the same unique attribute. And this is radioactive fallout from Fukushima, but it could be from a fuel pool. Any fuel pool on the planet would be the same emissions. It would look exactly like that. And this particular model is based on 31 days after Fukushima, and it's 1 million to 10 million atoms per cubic meter of air. And so what you're looking at is an automobile accident. The car doesn't go and hit 8 billion people and every insect and bird and mammal and bacteria and fungus on the planet and kill it, right? Only nuclear has that particular attribute. Because what you're looking at, now during the time was cesium-137, which, by the way, pulses energy for 600 feet, which means everything on the entire planet, every species, everything, is getting full-body X-rays. And what that means for insects and birds and the biota in your forest and everything else is annihilation, is sterilization. So an automobile doesn't sterilize, if you have an automobile accident, it doesn't sterilize all the species and humans on the planet in increments over time, right? It doesn't poison the food chain. It doesn't destroy, say, the pollinators, because the pollinators are getting radioactive pollen and bringing it back to their hive and destroying the genetics and ultimately the diversity and the health of the hive and eventually the reproduction of the hives, for instance. But this is symmetrical through all the species. And when you see it covering the entire planet, it has this other unique property that is insidious. It attacks water. So it attacks all the fresh water symmetrically within 31 days. And it's permanent for millions of years. It attacks the whole ecosystem. But we can't survive without water. Water is everybody's God in many ways. Because without water, try going without water for a while, a few days, and see how that works out for you. And when you get your hands on a glass, where you're going to go, God bless you, water, I love you, water, and everything else, because you're going to be so grateful to get that water in your hand. And the more healthy, like structured water, if you use structured water as water that's running over the rocks and minerals and everything else, right? And so that water in particular is natural. That's what we're designed for. Our bodies are designed for. And by the way, wherever we were born, we are linked to where we were born because the water in that area is the genetic makeup that created you. That was the minerals that created you, was that particular water. So you were bound to that area by that water. But structured water, which is water from the mountains and springs and stuff like that, your plants will grow 30% quicker with 30% more foliage and 30% more fruit, for instance, than water that's coming from your tap, which is electrolysis and chemicals, which changes the structure of the water. And this is not healthy water for you or anybody else. It's very, very terrible water for your body and for insects and birds and mammals and everything else. And scientists don't know why water changes its structure like that, but they do know how to change it back. But they do know, after nuclear bomb testing, one of the things they were noticed was a typical nuclear bomb, water would change the structure for 1,800 miles circumference around a nuclear site, which means everything that grew within 1,800 miles was unhealthy because it was unstructured water. And if there's studies, there's documentaries out there on water. Water is the only thing that exists in all three forms: liquid, gas, and solid. It's the only liquid that actually exists in all three forms. And that a plant can push itself up through cement. The plant can actually push itself up through pavement, which would take 300 atmospheric pressures, basically. This little tiny seedling can actually push its way through if there's a weak spot there. It's extraordinary abilities, right? And they used to use water. They used to take logs and soak them in water and then put them in cracks in rocks. They put logs in cracks in rocks, pour in water, and the water would expand and crack the rock through the wood, right? So So just an amazing thing. But you can change the structure of water back. There's many different ways to do it, apparently. And freezing it apparently changes the structure back. And nuclear is a lot like that, she said, like a car accident. But nuclear is not like a car accident. A car accident doesn't cause a plume of radioactive fallout to cover the entire planet, Jessica. And you actually know difference. You are very educated. You are not naive. You're just evil. She said in Fukushima, no one died from radiation. In 3 Mile Island, she said nobody died. This is an absurd lie. And in Fukushima, nobody died from radiation. This is an absurd lie. This is unbelievable, hideous, and a monstrous lie. It's completely unacceptable. But in order to get her way, she would sabotage everybody so that she can be wealthy. She'd throw everybody in the 8 million species under the bus so Jessica can be wealthy. To even suggest for a single second that nobody died, and that's her argument at a meeting that's seated by 50 people, basically from the university themselves. It's not pathetic, it's revolting. It shows the contempt, the absolute, unmitigated contempt that Jessica has for everybody. To stoop to that level. I don't understand why people like that exist outside that. We cover them all the time, right? And I'm always shocked. You know, I'm always terrified when I run across these people because they look like normal, good people. No matter what shirt she's wearing those stupid pieces of whatever it is around her neck. To say that nobody at 3 Mile Island died, which is a 100% dishonest lie, and to say that nobody at Fukushima died, there was 865,000 cancers in the first year. There's 14,200 children out of every 100,000 children across the entire country of Japan that need open heart surgery, congenital malformations. 14,200. There's 13,646 out of 38,000 children with thyroid tumors of 2 centimeters or bigger, and an adult thyroid is only 3 by 5 centimeters. And so a child's tumor on their thyroid is the equivalent of their thyroid. But dishonesty, that's the only way the industry can exist. It can't exist any other way. And, you know, you don't expect a woman to turn on the children like Jessica done. Just bear with me. Oh. And because it's not illegal to poison you with radiation, it doesn't mean it's okay, Jessica. She's sitting back there probably watching this now, laughing her arse off in her $1 million home with a big fat bank account. And that justifies the destruction of the ecosystem and everything else. Because she done okay, nobody else matters. So, 3 Mile Island, nobody died, she said. Fukushima, nobody died. Well, there's 7 people in one street died in a single year. There's 865,000 extra cancers in the first year, according to the Japan National Cancer Center. And not everybody got health care. Not everybody was diagnosed. Cancer is not the only illness or diseases or autoimmune deficiencies or injuries or illnesses that are manifest. There's heart and liver and lung and respiratory, pituitary and thyroid and adrenaline. There's Alzheimer's, dementia, autism, diabetes, Down syndrome. And this monster, but you can't really equate her with a person, see? Because what she done, her assertions are lethal. People died from drowning from the tsunami, but no one died from Fukushima, she said. And I'm going to show you some pictures of Chernobyl They're very hard pictures to look at. And I'll let you know when they're over. On the count of three, they're going to show up. 1, 2, 3. So there's orphanages after orphanages after orphanages in Chernobyl abandoned. Jessica doesn't go down there. These kids don't even have a radio. She has millions of dollars. She should go down there and give these kids some little secondhand TVs and radios so they can get through a day. I got about 10 more of these pictures. Jessica will deny these children health care so that her friends think she's a good person. That's what she's up to, see? She will sacrifice everybody so Jessica can have her perfect little world. Her perfect little world is everybody. It has to be poison for her to have her perfect little fucking world. And I have seen so many of these Jessicas. Jessica should go down and tell them family how wonderful fucking nuclear is. And you know what? She's arrogant enough to do it. She'd go down there and probably laugh at the children. And she definitely would go home and laugh about it after. I can tell you that much. Let's get a move on. Because the thing is, we cover Jessica's many times a day, every day, 5 days a week. And they all have the same rhetoric, the same narrative, the same lie. And they all look like they're normal people. They all look like they're probably really nice people. You probably wouldn't mind having them for a friend or a family member or a neighbor or something like that. But if I seen Jessica on the street, because I know how evil she actually is, I'll cross the street. Because I don't want to be on the same side of the street as somebody that evil. I don't think you can wash that off, see? And so Jessica, who says that, what about just adding more solar and wind renewable energy? Lovering says that while it would be technically possible, she doesn't see it happening due to social and political restraints. But Jessica, you know better. You're educated. You're not naive. You're very educated, and you know exactly that's a lie, don't you? You know, in 2024, this was a story from 21st of January this year, a couple of months ago. Nuclear went backwards 1.7 gigawatts. Jessica did tell the people in the audience that, did they? And that renewable grew by 507 gigawatts, which is equal to over 600 large nuclear reactor animosity equivalent in renewable in just 1 year, in just 12 months. And it's 50% more than it was in 2022, which is going to be the same thing for next year, right? And the total nuclear capacity is only 364 gigawatts, but renewable produced 507 gigawatts last year of new energy. But yet here's Jessica saying, no, I don't see how wind and solar can happen because of the policies. That kind of dishonesty, I don't know if the word irked me is right, but I don't understand these people in the nuclear industry. Because in order for the industry to even look reasonable, or Jessica to look like a human that breathes air and drinks water like me and you, they have to lie every sentence. Well, not just a lie sentence, there's multiple lie each sentence. Can nuclear energy solve the climate crisis? Of course it can't. And Jessica knows it 100%. But she doesn't have her wealth because she's honest. She got it because she has to harm everybody within 1,000 miles of a nuclear installation for her to exist. The co-founder and the executive director of Good Energy Collective. It's another name for a scumbag that looks like a human but has none of the attributes. Like Sama here. She's the head of the World Nuclear Association. We covered her lots and lots and lots. It's right. She looks like a nice person. The Director General of the World Nuclear Association, which is a lobbying group for the nuclear industry, Dr. Sama. And she's just like Jessica, except much more wicked. I know that sounds crazy, that someone is worse than Jessica, but Meet Sama, the Director General of the World Nuclear Association. We've covered him lots, like thousands of times over the last decade alone. Is an international organization that promotes nuclear power, like Jessica, with the goal of tripling nuclear capacity by 2050 to achieve the net zero greenhouse gas emissions. Well, the greenhouse gases they're talking about is carbon. So gas, oil, and coal produces carbon. You can't have trees or plants or insects or biota or anything else. We can't even exist without carbon. You get rid of carbon, we go. And that narrative about the carbon, by the way, I got a great little video that you should watch, because the lie is based upon a bigger lie. What percentage of our atmosphere is CO2, is carbon? And watch it all the way to the end. It's a very short video, but it's a very important video. It's a very telling video. And bear with me, because I got to make some adjustments. I got to adjust the volume, and I'll start it again.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Panelists, let me just go right down the line real fast. What percent of our atmosphere is CO2? Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Panelists, let me just go right down the line real fast. What percent of our atmosphere is CO2? Take your best guess. You don't have to be accurate. All down the line.
Repeat that question.
What percent of our atmosphere is CO2, carbon dioxide? Wild guess, it's okay.
I'll buy 5%.
5?
I'll just follow you then.
We'll go 7. That's my favorite number.
I'll see their 5 and suggest that we know that transportation causes 49% of CO2, so that's why we're all working on energy transition.
All right. So what number do you think it is?
5.
5? How about you? I didn't hear you, Mr. Dreyer.
7.
7. Did you have one, Mr. Boyd?
So we got a 5, 7,
This price is right.
8. I'm going to
Okay.
get the high end.
All right. Well, I appreciate that, and I don't mean to put you on ice. I ask a lot of people that because all we hear is climate change, CO2, CO2. I heard a couple of you on the panel saying you're looking to change your vehicles to electric, even though we don't have the electric grid. And me as a farmer, I wouldn't be real happy about running out and replacing $300,000, $500,000, $1 million pieces of equipment because someone wants it to be electric. The answer is 0.04%. Not 1%, not 0.5%. It's 0.04%, and it's gone up from 0.03 over the last couple decades. This is what we're being all contorted into doing, is this tiny change in CO2. If we get below 0.02, plant life starts dying off.
So if you get below 0.2, plant life dies off. And we're only at 0.4. We should be at around 0.6. Nuclear has destroyed the ecosystem. 80 years of unmitigated fallout has destroyed the ecosystem. Carper calls for safe, clean nuclear. There is no such thing as safe, clean nuclear. Nuclear is splitting the atoms. The minute you take it out of the reactor, it's splitting atoms into the ecosystem. And it's like an invisible snowstorm. It's hard to comprehend it for the average person, but I can help you visualize it. This is a model of Neptunium-239 dispersion, and it's based on 20 days to your left and 21 to your right. This decays to plutonium, I believe, 239. And the plume model covers the whole planet in about 20 days. Like all the models of the radioactive fallout from all these disease factories. But this model is based on venting, which means that it's based on the same amount of releases you're getting from the fuel pools each day. And there's 1,000 fuel pools worldwide making plumes like this each day. This model is on Fukushima numbers, right? Of just the Neptunium. But we have studies of the failure. This is absurd numbers we're talking about. This reactor was the plutonium mixed oxide reactor. This is the equivalent fuel that you would use in the fabled small modular reactors. And because it's reclaimed uranium, reclaimed plutonium that's already gone through a chain reaction, it's 2 billion times more toxic than industrial poison. And so if you put it into a chain reaction again, it's so toxic we don't know what to do with it. And because you need this for produce significant weapons. That's what it's all about. It's about the whole nuclear plant is about the fuel cycle. And once it goes through the fuel cycle, now it's a breeder fuel. It's breeding, it's splitting atoms all the time. And they want the plutonium atoms, uranium-235 atoms. But then it's still splitting all the other isotopes it does to boil the water. And this goes on for millions of years. There's no containment. And it's been going on now for 80 years. And Fukushima was a pulse event with 4 reactors and 8 fuel pools melting down at the one time. Each of these reactors, not counting the 2 fuel pools were above it with decades of reactor cores that are gone. But just a reactor, even if it wasn't the plutonium mixed oxide fuel reactor, is about 100 Chernobyls, the animosity equivalent. It's pure uranium, pure plutonium, unlike Chernobyl, which was a graphite. Now, Chernobyl, they closed 9,400 farms in Ireland, Scotland, United Kingdom for decades. They closed the freshwater fishery in Sweden for 30 years. But after Fukushima, Sweden was like, hell with it. Might as well get them while we can. So here's the nuclear energy, clean, safe nuclear energy during the NRC nomination hearing. So the NRC has the authority to make it illegal to poison you with radiation, but they won't do it. And they're appointed, each administration appoints them, right? Who the NRC is going to be. And we see that symmetrically throughout the nuclear industry countries. So let me bring that up for you, because that's unbelievably important. And every time I cover people like Sama and the general director of the World Health Organization or the World Nuclear Association, and Jessica, people like that, I always get a little depressed, because they're so evil. It depresses me, and because we've done this for so long, it still affects me the same way, though. Because I'm pretty strong, because I deal with it so much all day, every day. Here we go. I always get a little depressed, I notice, whenever I'm dealing with these people. And that's why I lash out sometimes, is just to get rid of my way of equalizing. Protesters and ex-candidate to plead guilty to seeking nuclear material but would not get prison under the deal. Well, he was going to get prison. They were calling for prison until the lawyers said, hang on a second. A noted Madison protester, former congressional candidate who was arrested last year after the FBI agents said they caught him trying to buy a radioactive material online, allegedly to kill someone, will plead guilty Friday to one of the charges against him, but will not serve any time in prison under a plea agreement filed in federal court. He's going to plead guilty, but he won't serve any time in prison for trying to get his hands on dirty bombs. He was originally charged with attempting to possess radioactive material with the intent to cause death or seriously bodily injuries, essentially a nuclear terrorism charge. But he was arrested and charged, and authorities says he tried to buy polonium-210 on the dark web, which only the government has access to, apparently. Serious communication begins with FBI sting, right? The false flag, right? They go and cook up some useful idiot and then say the terrorists are trying to get us. He said Ryan was trying to get it to kill himself and make it appear that he was killed by the government. Using the substance was difficult for anyone but the government to get. The punchline is 2 more away. But in March, Bugney and Myers, the 2 lawyers representing him, filed a series of motions to dismiss the indictment against Ryan, asserting that the nuclear terrorism charge under which Ryan was charged was unconstitutional. It was unconstitutional to charge with nuclear terrorism because Congress lacked the authority to criminalize poisoning with radioactive substances. So Congress has the authority to criminalize poisoning you with any chemical except for the anthropogenic man-made radioactive chemicals. Because if it was illegal to poison you wouldn't be able to use it in hospitals, right? Or anywhere else. So U.S. Senator Tom Carper, the chairman of the Senate Environment and Public Works Committee, today led a hearing to consider the nomination of Christopher Hansen to serve as a member of the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. The Commission must ensure the existing reactors continue to operate safely. They're all hemorrhaging radiation from the fuel pools 24 hours a day. It's the worst nightmare imaginable, and everybody fell for it, and it's happening at 414 nuclear plants worldwide and 1,000 fuel pools. And they're all, almost every one of them, surrounded by farms, active farms. And this is on purpose, by the way. The Commission must ensure the existing reactors continue to operate safe, in many cases well past their original design life. And their design life was because these are high-pressure reactors, 1,000, 2,000 pounds per square inch in the containments. And after about 30 years, they're known to become very brittle, as it's known as a Wigner effect. And what happens is from the neutron bombardment breaks the integrity of the steel, the cement, and everything else. And now it's very vulnerable. It's what's known as actual brittle. If you go up at some point in the future, you can go up and hit it with a sledgehammer, and this containment will split open. Now, if it's under 1,000, 2,000 pounds per square inch, and you have an earthquake and it rocks open, you're going to have a Fukushima on your hands. And we could very well have one tonight or tomorrow, because Israel is stupid enough to go and bomb Iran's nuclear plant, and Iran is stupid enough to go back and bomb Israel's nuclear plant. And the people that really lose is the 8 million species and the future of humanity. To Chair Chris Hansen says, if confirmed by the Senate, I pledge, a dib, to continue leading the agency, which is a disgusting industry, and tackling the challenges ahead for both the existing fleet of disease factories / nuclear power plants and next generation disease factories / nuclear technologies, while upholding the agency's critical safety security missions, which is to make weapon-grade plutonium. On supporting Chris Hansen, Chairman Carper, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission is most effective when it has a full slate of commissioners and carry out the critically important mission to protect the safety of the nuclear facilities and maintain the public's trust. They maintain it through deceit and dishonesty and deception and misrepresentation. And it's illegal to poison you with radiation, and Chris Hansen has the authority to make it illegal to poison you with radiation while the administration has him in a position, because he's the only one who can do it, and he's not doing it. Because your Congress doesn't have the authority in America, the politicians in Canada and the Senate don't have the authority. The Diet in Japan doesn't have the authority to make it illegal to poison you with radiation. Because if it was illegal to poison with radiation, nuclear couldn't exist. Because they can't contain it. And let me explain that one more time to you, because I still haven't done a great job of explaining that. And that's facet is unbelievably important to this equation. So I got a simple, stupid way of articulating that. How does a nuclear plant poison people? Well, first off, there's just an absurd amount of documentation, studies, academic studies, that show that food crops uptake radiation at an extraordinary rate. So then there's no way the nuclear plant doesn't know these academic studies exist. So then the question is, why is almost every nuclear power plant surrounded by farms? Now, a couple of weeks ago, I done quite a few interesting shows over the last number of weeks. But particularly a couple of weeks back, we went back into the time machine. We've done a couple of time machine shows from the original days. But we've also done a show on Chernobyl. Last week or the week before, I don't know, because I do so much, I can't keep up with it anymore. In the last couple of weeks. And the show was mostly academic studies. And it shows you all the facets of a nuclear accident, that not all of them, sorry, a fraction of the factions, several hundred studies, of different things that they're studying after a nuclear meltdown. One of his sex ratio studies, where they study the sex ratio of entire continents to see how much radiation damage. That's how they determine it. And what they're looking for is more males than females being born. They're also doing studies on, of course, the first studies they're doing is autism and Down syndrome, because they know that's going to be prolific. And that's going to quantify the rest of the studies. You can get money now for the rest of the studies because you have a cause and effect. And this is every accident. This is the first studies they're doing is autism and Down syndrome on children, because they're going to be born with debilitating illnesses. And so the sex ratio studies will show more males than females, and then that quantifies more studies. But what it also means, though, if you're getting more males than females, say in humans, then eventually you're going to disappear because you have less babies, right? But if you really look at the bigger picture, you're looking at the 8 million species. So if it's catastrophic to a human, it's devastating. It's annihilating for the species. Because the species are hundreds of thousands of times more vulnerable than a large creature like us. And so a child is thousands of times more vulnerable to the same dose as we are. Hence the reason why 14,200 children out of every 100,000 children in Japan need open heart surgery when they're born because of heart defects. Now, it's also known as the Chernobyl hearts. Now, they say 10 to 100 times higher, but it's simply orders of magnitudes above that. It's at least 1,000 times more devastating. Why is every nuclear power plant, except for a few, surrounded by farms? Right up to, and they all have that same attribute. The farms are always right up to the facilities. Because it doesn't just cause cancers, by the way. There's heart and liver and lung and respiratory and pituitary, thyroid and adrenaline. Now, the thyroid gland, for instance, which is feeding radioactive hormones to the entire body. Try wrapping your mind around that statement. So if you radiate the thyroid gland, you're saturating it. Then for children, for instance, their skeleton is going to be saturated with mutated stem cells also, because you can't just have thyroid issues. Because other gamma emitters are going to go into the thyroid besides iodine-131. And they like to compartmentalize you, and you just think of iodine-131 and maybe cesium-137. But then the studies all clearly showed plants and trees and fruits and everything suck up radiation. So when you have big accidents and you kill you're killing the ecosystem. The first thing you're destroying is the forest, the ability to break down the litter and the foliage in the forest, because you destroy a lot of the single cells. And particularly the oceans you're going to destroy because you're symmetrically covering the whole planet. This model is based on 19.5 days, 486 hours of radioactive fallout, but it's based on a flawed amount. It's not based on the actual inventories that were really lost. It's not even based on a fraction of a percent of it. That's what the model to the bottom right is finally showing. And so you killed, one of the first things we noticed with Japan was fallout, was you killed the bases of the food chain, the bases of the oxygen chain, the bases of the carbon sequestering chain. You killed the phytoplankton because it's at the surface. And even more insidiously, because it's at the surface, it get it double attacked, because the nutrients at the surface, in the ocean layers that falls to the ocean floor, they're brought back up by upwellings, and that also is known to feed the phytoplankton. And the phytoplankton, it includes like the eggs and larvae of starfish and mussels and clams and oysters, which are the filters of the ocean too, by the way. And they're so effective at filtering. Like, it's hard to comprehend how effective a couple of shells, a couple of, say, oyster or scallop shells. There was an experiment done with high school students done with scallop shells. They baked them in the oven at 300 degrees for about a half an hour or something to kill any parasites in that. And they took one out and it was raining, they took dirty water from a mud puddle and put it in a container and dropped the shells down until when it came down the next morning, the water was crystal clear. And they've done many examples after. So if you got these shells around and you just bake them in the oven, get rid of parasites and put them in your fish tanks, you're going to be quite shocked at how clean your water is going to be for the rest of your life. When I was diving, I was a commercial diver for 14 years. And one of the things I noticed, I came across, I remember the first time I seen it was this wall. I was working there's 27,000 islands in British Columbia. And we're up by Alaska, and we're doing 100-day trips back to back on the ocean. And we're doing food harvesting at that time. And I was doing sea urchins on that day. It was red urchins and purple urchins. And we were only picking a 3-inch urchin, right? You don't touch anything else, just a 3-inch. And so anyway, I'm going along these walls, and there's a lot of urchins. And it's really easy picking, and you have flotation devices attached to your bag, so you just keep adding air to it. And you're going along with the current, and you're just picking these bags off the wall, and you put air into it and send it up to the surface, get another bag, and you do that 10 times. That's 5,000 pounds a day, right? About 20,000 urchins a day. But they're all just a 3-inch. That's it. That's all Japan wanted. It goes to Nagasaki. It goes to the 2 biggest auction blocks in Japan. But anyway, I'm going along this wall, and British Columbia is tropical forest, right? Tropical rainforest. 27,000 islands. Each island has these golden beaches. The beaches are made of shells that have broken down over many millenniums, right? Eons. And so the sand is made of shellfish. It's hard to comprehend. I got a way for you to comprehend it. Just bear with me. Because I remember I've done years and years of research expeditions along that coastline. That's the boats, and that's the expeditions there from Vancouver, British Columbia to Alaska. And the arrows are kind of articulating where I spent 4 to 5 months a year for 6 years. And I hit it from every direction. You might be surprised how many I'm dedicated today as I was then. And I hit this from every direction. You can't imagine, you can't comprehend it. And we had the documentations to back up our fears, right? So we done the research expeditions. What we discovered was the species to your left are gone. They're exterminated. And they're not just gone off the coastline, they're gone from the ocean. Because I went back for 5 years extra after the first year, and the species didn't come back. So normally if you plow in a healthy beach, for instance, the species on both sides would fill in the gap eventually, and from down deeper would fill up that real estate, right? It didn't happen. But I had to go back year after year to quantify that particular assertion. But the beaches are made up, and that's not a good example of the beach, but the beaches are crystal golden sand. You can see the tropical rainforest. And so these are my pictures where I went back, and remember I dove this coastline for years, and the Atlantic Ocean, not just the Pacific. And the species are exterminated. These species now are exterminated. But this diversity is what made up the beaches along the whole coastline of 27,000 islands. And when you go there now, the beaches, the sand is there, but there's no shellfish. But anyway, back to the story. Let me finish with the story. So I'm going along this wall, and because I'm doing 6 hours a day, I'm only doing 30 feet, basically, diving, shallow diving, right? That's what I really loved about that particular job. But it was incredible. It was incredible diversity. It was incredible experience. You couldn't wait to go down every single day because the community underwater was stunning. It was it's just no way to explain it really, outside of these pictures. So I come to this wall, and it's about 50 feet from this, but there's a beach there, and I need to go to the other side of where there's big rocks from the mountains, where all the urchins are hanging out again. So you got the beach, and then I realize what I'm looking at is a 50-foot wall carved out on the back of this island, of 27,000 islands, and so there's many islands exactly like that, no doubt, where it dropped down. And because the beach went back in, and there wasn't big boulders on the beach, it was beach, right? It was made up of sand from the scallops, the abalones, the clams, the little necks, the manillas, the razorback clams, the gooey ducks, the oysters, the list goes very long, right? The mussels, the periwinkles, incredible, unbelievable, unimaginable, inconceivable diversity that's in the shallow water, the nursery of the Pacific Ocean, which was hammered by radioactive fallout. And so here was a wall 50 feet high from the ocean floor up to the surface of shells where it was carved out, and it was 50 feet of shells stacked on top of each other, intertwined with each other in different stages of decomposition. And I estimated there had to be, just in that one spot, a container ship of shells. That if I went there with the equipment, I can bring out a container ship of shells just out of that one little spot of calcium, right? You know, we're humans, we think resources. But when I went back, there was 30,000 insects known to live at the high tide line. This is a 19-foot tide exchange. There's no insects. There's nothing in the forest. And I used to bring recording devices into the forest and leave it there, and I would go around in the zodiacs, because I have two different zodiacs. There's one that goes on the top of another toes behind me also. That little one right there. Right? So that has two motors onto it, and the big zodiac has two motors on it, and that's the liveaboard. And what you're doing is, you know, one year I went 20 miles down the west coast of the islands, the open ocean, and then I would do 15 kilometers this way, 15 kilometers that way, move the whole operation 20 or 30 kilometers, and then do the same thing for months. And because that's the pinch points of all the islands where the ocean has to squeeze through these pinch points, and the species, we didn't find them. They're gone. And they're gone because of the radioactive fallout, the perpetual radioactive fallout. And you're talking about over 7,000 highly visible species. And, you know, say there's around 700 algae. There was another 5,500 species of invertebrates without the backbones that I'm not counting in the 7,000 highly visible species, which is basically 80 species of starfish. They all come in multiple vibrant colors. There was... I got a better way. Let me do that. Set myself up a bit better. So there's around 80 species of starfish. They all come in multiple vibrant colors, right? There's around 70 species of sponges. They all come in multiple colors. There's around 460 species of worms, or 480 species of worms. There's around 76 species of sea anemones, and each species comes in multiple vibrant colors. There's the endless, unbelievable, just unimaginable amount of shellfish. And so, like, anything that wasn't covered in something else was covered in mussels or covered in these guys, a low tide. And now you can never go ashore on a beach because of the sea urchins. But now there's no beaches you couldn't go ashore. It's a total extinction event. And so when I see people like Sammy out there, like, going ashore was considered stupid in the Zodiac. Now my big Zodiac got a Kevlar coating, right? It's bulletproof. But the little Zodiac is not. And so going ashore was inconceivable. At low tide, you don't want to go ashore because try to wander from the boat all the way up to here to put a beach lawn, you break your neck. There's no way you're not going to fall down and hurt yourself. Completely exterminated by Fukushima within just a couple of years. We went back multiple years and the species never returned. Every rock was just buried in life. The diversity is it's inconceivable. And I used to get wrapped up, many days I'd be wrapped up in bull kelp, for instance. There's 700 algae. Bull kelp, you would get wrapped up in it like a spider in a web. And it's no good to carry a knife because you're going to lose it down there. And so the trick was you would take, if you were in a full-face Pegasus or a mouthpiece or whatever, you have to remove it and chew your arms out. Have to chew through the kelp. That's the only way you can get out of it. And then chew through the other side, slowly untangle yourself and fill your suit up with air and come back up. And we used to do a hookah system. When you do the hookah system, you dive in the bull kelp. It was insanity. But I had such a relationship in my world that I considered these species my friend. To me, they were my friend. And I look forward to seeing my friends every single day. And so when I went back to British Columbia, and I meandered the whole coast 4 to 5 months a year after year after year, it's hard to comprehend how broken my heart was when I seen a complete extinction event. Something I thought was not possible because of the incredible diversity. I had no way of comprehending that could happen, that all the species could disappear. And when you have to ask yourself, why is the media pretending they're in a building that don't exist? And people like Jessica we showed earlier, or Sama from the World Nuclear Association, why do they promote that when it actually looks like this? And the reason is pretty clear, because it done that. It wiped out all the species. And so they live a lie every second of every day. And I thank goodness every day I don't have that burden. That I'm not burdened with something like that. I don't have that to haunt me day in, day out. Because it would haunt me. It haunts me now, and that's why I'm still here all these years later. That's why I still go 5 days a week. That's why I'm still doing research expeditions and all of my equipment. And I have a pretty big operation, but my equipment is pretty busted up. And it's very disappointing. It's very difficult and very dangerous for me to take my equipment and do the things that I do with them, because I'm not healthy. I had 3 heart attacks last year, and they put 7 stents inside of me, the most the province has ever had done to somebody. And they didn't do it to me. An international team showed up and done the surgery and flew away again. Literally royalty, right? Children with over 11 becquerels a kilogram of cesium start to see heart problems. You can put 200 million in it. Think of a kilogram as or a becquerel, a BQ, as a pulse of energy from an atom. So think of 11 atoms. And suggesting that cesium is the only issue is an insane assertion, by the way. But you can put 200 million atoms in the head of a needle and you can't see it with your naked eye. So how the frig are you going to perceive 11? And how are you going to avoid 11 when you covered the whole planet in numbers that defy any kind of typical reality? Why is every nuclear power plant surrounded by farms worldwide? And these are weapons facilities. These are reprocessing facilities. And that one's in the United Kingdom, right? Sellafield. Surrounded by farms now for 70 years. And there's professionals out there who will tell you just inhaling one hot particle, and everything from a nuclear meltdown is a hot particle, can cause a cancer. So why is every nuclear power plant surrounded by farms? And why is there cancer epidemics now worldwide post-nuclear industry, and particularly post-Fukushima? And why did they do the farms when all these studies existed that clearly showed that having food within 100 miles of a disease factory, which is a nuclear power plant, was going to end badly for everything and everybody? And for adults, 50 atoms per kilogram, in humans lead to irreversible lesions in the organs, in your vital organs on top of that. But Jessica would have you believe not a friggin' hair was hurt on a single person when it's total devastation. And I don't understand these people. I don't understand how they can look anybody in the face. I don't understand that. I can't comprehend that kind of evil. And how do you avoid 11 atoms per kilogram or 50 atoms per kilogram for adults when Japan says their safe limit is 100 atoms per kilogram? And they're only acknowledging cesium as if uranium, plutonium, americium, neptunium, strontium, and 1,000 other fission products don't exist, when they absolutely do, and are produced from every nuclear power plant from the fuel pools all day long. And that the biggest byproduct of the radiative fuel rod is the curium isotope. And curium isotopes need lead shielding 20 times thicker than plutonium does. And plutonium, of course, as you know, if you've been around at all, killed all the animals in all the studies. And typically when you get plutonium, you're going to get 3 tumors. You're going to get a lung tumor, a liver tumor, which is the biggest killer, by the way, and a skeleton tumor. And so for small mammals and animals and birds and everything else, you're talking about, and children, you're talking about mutated stem cells now, forever. You're talking about destroying the essence of humanity in increments over time. And we are 80 years down the road. We are way behind. So they no-rate food, and these are just 134 cesium, 85 strontium, which means all the other isotopes are going to be uptake too. So why is every nuclear power plant surrounded by farms when it has those particular attributes? Why would you do that unless you're purposely trying to poison the population? And Japan is growing food right alongside of 1-ton bags of radiation. You got 14 prefectures where the food was banned for a decade, but they never stopped growing food. So they were shipping it everywhere. Canada removed all the restrictions after 93 days. So for the first number of years, Japan couldn't ship it anywhere, basically only Canada. And Canada now has an epidemic of illnesses and diseases, and autoimmune deficiencies and injuries and illnesses, and cancers. But there's so many issues. Health, your immune system is compromised because this stuff is in your body, is pulsing energy almost at the speed of light every second. Your body has to repair every damage, and then it has to attack the source. So you're producing a huge amount of white blood cells, which displaces your red blood cells, which are carrying oxygen and nutrition. And imagine how bad this is for insects and birds and mammals and animals, because we can't exist without them, and the pollinators and everything else. And we don't have a right to allow this to happen. No industry has the right to destroy the entire ecosystem. And they got 80 years of getting away with it. And they got 414 plants worldwide. So this is why geothermal is so important to me. This is why every show you'll hear me talk about geothermal is the solution, right? So they know, look, like wheat sucks up all this radiation. So why is every nuclear power plant surrounded by farms? And that's only a fraction of what I got of farms, a nuclear power plant surrounded by farms. But when I start digging through it and I start looking for aerial views, like above views and stuff like that, and I confirmed my worst fear that almost every nuclear power plant was surrounded by farms, I can tell you one thing, that got my attention for the rest of my life, because I can't deny it. And when I was on those research expeditions, I can't deny that. And when I'd done it for 5 more years to quantify it, to see if the species did return, if the ocean did recover, and they didn't. And when I came ashore with the big announcement, what did they do? They arrested me and gave me gag orders, and that was 3.5 years before I can tell the story. And when I got 25,000 followers on YouTube, I was there looking for spiders and discovered they were missing. Because if you're going to look for species in the forest, the first thing you're checking is the spider webs, right? See what's in the area. And they're gone. 500,000 per acre, and there's none to be found. So when I reported that, YouTube took down my channel with 1,600 of these presentations. Burned, basically. And there's so much work to do the things I'm doing. Like, it's so, you got to go through it to comprehend it, but it's an absurd amount of work every day that I go through, so I can come here every night and try to talk some sense into this planet and into the people in the industries. Because like the majority of the people that come by this site are policymakers and investors and people involved in the industry and in the energy sectors and stuff like that. Because the average person's too distracted with the distractions that are fed to them from 11,000 different directions every day, right? We focus on the biggest threat, which is nuclear, and nuclear fallout in particular. And nuclear fuel pools is the biggest enemy of the 8 million species in the future of humanity. And they're each equal to an asteroid that is intending to take us out. except it's a slow kill and it's a guaranteed. But even long after the human experience, that radioactive fallout, anthropogenic man-made fallout that is not created by the solar system, doesn't come from the sun, has our number. So all these radioactive bullets, and it's got all of our names on them. And they will get you at some point. You can't avoid it because this industry has never been held accountable. It has no incentive not to be evil. Same as Israel. There's no incentive not to be evil. Western named academic partner by Canadian Nuclear Isotope Council. We're going to leave it there. I'm going to call it quits. That's enough for me. I've been at this 5 days, my 5th day. I'll be back on Sunday. We're going to close the poll down. Hope everybody voted if they got the opportunity. And when the video is over, I'll have practically no views because YouTube disrespects me. If Israel destroys Iran nuclear plant and Iran destroys Israel's nuclear plant, do they get the Darwin Award? I couldn't resist it because I needed that question to exist because nobody has that question out there. Because I can guarantee you, if Iran goes after Israel, or if Israel goes after Iran's nuclear plant, Iran is going to smack Israel's nuclear plant immediately. They're going to wait for the wind to blow towards Israel, and it's going to pop it, right? Because it's on then, isn't it? And then we can all kiss our future goodbye, because the radioactive fallout has already compromised the integrity of humanity and 8 million species. We can't handle another event. And these self-centered weirdos down there are stupid enough to do that to us. Ask yourself why every nuclear power plant is surrounded by farms, and you're well on your way to asking why the world is so frigged up and why there's so many diseases and illnesses and autoimmune deficiencies and injuries. You're well on your way. If Israel destroys Iran's nuclear plant, and Iran will, of course, destroy Israel's nuclear plant, and there's nothing they can do about it, do they get the Darwin Award, or do we get the Darwin Award for allowing it to happen and never speaking up? That's a question I don't have an answer to. In the very bottom of my descriptions is 2 links directly to donate to me through my PayPal or to my website with credit cards. And that site now is 10 years old. We've never had a hitch with it. And this operation don't do anything unless people support me. And I don't have very much support. I have a little tiny bit of support. It barely keeps the operation alive. And we need to get in their faces. And I have the ability and the energy and the knowledge to challenge this industry and disrupt it forever if given the opportunity. And so we're hanging on, waiting for the right people to come along and help this organization succeed and explode and reality punch everybody in the guts a few times, and the world can make decisions based on facts instead of deceit and dishonesty like Jessica and Sama's doing to us, and many, many, many like them, right? What a disgusting person, what she done. What an incredible betrayal. Let's hope Iran and Israel don't betray humanity and the 8 million species for their own ideology. Let's hope they take us into account, because we deserve to be taken into account. Whether they like it or not, we're involved. It affects us. It affects our loved ones. It affects the 8 million species. It's time to stop being self-centered on this planet. It really is. See everybody Sunday unless there's a major event. Have a great night, a great day. And don't forget, I love every one of you. You're wonderful people. And don't let anybody ever tell you difference. God bless everybody. Have a great night, great day tomorrow. We'll see everybody on Sunday unless there's an event. We'll be back. Hopefully Israel and Iran can keep it together for a couple of days until rationale takes over. Take care, folks.